We're not doing this to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, man. I want to talk about this really quick, and this is not a topic about the MVP discussion, which I am omitting myself from until I do a video on awards or whatever. I want to talk about something that is usually a trend on the internet, and I know it's the internet, but it's also trickles into basketball media, which in turn gets trickled out loud on national TV and other pretty big platforms that discuss basketball. But I can already see the turn happening, and we do this a lot with players, and I'm seeing it happening with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with this whole free throw merchant bullshit. You know, he's starting to get the treatment, the one possession out of a game that becomes a viral clip, and then that means everybody thinks that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does the grift or the flopping or whatever you want to call it every possession of every game, when that is not the case. And that is my problem with this whole foul baiting, grifting discussion, or my problem with the people who cry about this shit. Now, you could make the argument that because I'm a Sixer fan, maybe I have a little bit of a slant towards this, but I can tell you, as somebody who has watched Dwayne Wade, one of my favorite players of all time, Allen Iverson, hate watching the Lakers because I grew up in Southern California, hate watching Kobe Bryant, watching early Kevin Durant with his rip-through move to the point where Phil Jackson got mad and had a quote about it, calling it bullshit, and Kevin Durant being like, well, don't fucking foul. I've seen plenty of stars fish for calls. The egregious ones don't happen every game, but those are the ones that usually get clipped and then it gets shared. Or usually, which comes with the foul grifting crying crowd, and I'm saying that affectionately, if I can, they'll take a clip of an obvious foul and then they'll say, how is this a foul? Like there was the clip in the Boston Thunder game the other day where Jaylen Brown clearly had his right hand and wrist all up in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's off arm, the left arm, and then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, feeling the contact, rose up and shot. And I don't know if you guys have played basketball before. It might look like a touch foul on TV, and it might be like, oh, that's marginal contact, let that go. You try gathering to shoot a basketball with somebody's hand in your cookie jar. Try it. And that's my other problem. He's getting that treatment now too, where it's now people are complaining about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on obvious foul calls. But my main issue with all of this is it eventually gets painted into Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a foul merchant. And I know this might sound like a little internet trolley thing. It's not, trust me. I have already seen a few prominent media members try to paint Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as a foul merchant. And the problem with that is people are going to think that that is just what he does. That is all he does in his game, when that is not the case whatsoever. It's not even the first thing I think of. I think of his deceleration, his handle, his ability to get to any spot on the floor, his mid-ranger, his snatchback dribble step back, which is something I highlighted a lot last year when he was just insane, and now he's even more insane this year. But he's a guard that gets to the paint a lot, and he's going to draw fouls. Yes, he's going to fish for some, but I've never really cared about the grifting thing. Do some grifts annoy me more than others? Yeah, sure. I'm not a fan of the Trae Young and Jalen Brunson thing where they get the defender on the backside and then they jump backwards or sideways into them when they're doing a pick and roll and they're doing the dance where they string along the pick and roll, stretch it out a little bit, get the defender on the hip or the side, and then you all of a sudden stop and bump into them. I hate those type of fouls, sure, but like peak Houston James Harden never bothered me. And you can go on my channel and see, those are some of my first YouTube videos, was James Harden and Joel Embiid stuff. Like James Harden, his foul grifting, he had techniques and stuff where it was signature. Yes, I'm not saying James Harden and Joel Embiid don't grift. They obviously do. They're some of the best to ever do it, right? But that's not the basis of their game, which is what bothers me about this conversation. Yes, they draw a lot of fouls. Yes, they overfish for fouls sometimes. And yes, sometimes it's a problem in the playoffs. I don't think it's much of a problem as people make it out to be, as they have historically made it out to be with Harden and Embiid. Embiid, there's a lot more stuff as to why he doesn't succeed in the playoffs. But all the stereotypes and misconceptions that come with foul drawing and grifting, or yes, you could argue some of it is a problem. I just mentioned some grifting calls I don't like, but these guys are good. A lot of the fouls they draw are legitimate. Whether you like them or not, whether you like the Jaylen Brown hand in the cookie jar foul or not, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is good irregardless of the free throws. And I think that's why the foul grifting conversation also bothers me, is that we're missing that. We're missing that part where it's like, okay, yes, he draws a lot of fouls, but the dude is one of the best in the business at driving and getting into the paint, leads the league in drives for the preeminent drive and kick team, which now has a lot of different offensive variations because of the players they added this past offseason. But this dude gets to the paint. He is powerful. He can shed you. He can juke you. He can deaccelerate. And his handle is one of the more underrated handles in the NBA. Watch that first quarter in the Boston Thunder game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a move where he shook Jaylen Brown by doing a complete behind-the-back dribble, right to left, and then weaved his way through the paint and finished on the other side as he was falling and sliding on the floor. Like, that's how good this dude is. You'll hear defense like Christian Brown, for example, after Denver won the second part of that back-to-back they played, in Oklahoma City. Christian Brown basically said it's not the free throws, the dude is just tough. And Jaylen Brown said the same thing after that game. He's like, dude, he's just tough to guard. Because he is. It's like someone described it. I forgot who. It's somebody I follow on Twitter, but they said, I have to find it. But it was basically to the effect of trying to contain Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like trying to catch water with your bare hands. Like, it's hard to guard this dude. So he's going to draw a lot of fouls. James Harden, his step back three is so ridiculous and forceful, and he can drive to the rim. Prime Houston James Harden, of course. That sometimes you're going to foul. Joel Embiid, especially prime Joel Embiid, unfortunately I have to use that in past tense now, when he started moving his game to the foul line, and it was the face-up with the mid-range combined with the drive. Like, people just assume that Joel Embiid's game starts with the free throws. It doesn't. It starts with that triple threat position and has long been one of the top leaders among centers in drives per game, and had one of the more deadlier mid-range games, in addition to all the other stuff he does. And I'm not going to let this happen to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because the shit's happening on Twitter, the shit's happening on Reddit, and like I said, it's the internet. Sometimes you just can't take a lot from it. It's not what the usual representation is. But when a league is so connected and needs social media like the NBA does, and they have it at their disposal and they use it all the time, the media members that cover the sport use that all the time. A lot of people have made NBA media careers out of social media. That means naturally the flow of information that comes from there is going to somehow be broadcasted to a larger audience that might not be in that platform. And so that means when somebody says that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a foul merchant and how that might affect him in the playoffs, this upcoming playoffs, you're just feeding the misinformation and tainting the beautiful game that is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's. And I'm sorry, like, if I'm being real honest here, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander doesn't even come close to the grifting that James Harden did or Joel Embiid did. The dude averages like 9 free throws a game. Last year he averaged just below 9. The year where he first started making first-team All-NBA and was top 5 in MVP voting, he averaged 11. But let's be real here. The dude gets to whatever spot he wants, and he's so efficient from every spot on the floor. And the criticism, because I've heard this criticism too, it's like, well, let's see what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does in the playoffs because those foul calls won't be coming. And I usually think that's overblown. Like, if you look at James Harden and Joel Embiid's career free throw rates in the regular season versus the playoffs, there's a dip, but it's not that much of a dip to where people think, oh, that's the main reason why they're ineffective in the playoffs. But yes, the refs usually let a little bit more contact go. I do like seeing a little bit more contact in my playoff basketball and all that stuff. But I don't think that was ever the main reason why those two couldn't succeed. But that definitely doesn't apply to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, especially last year when he had his first real playoff run since becoming a perennial first team All-NBA guard. In the Dallas series especially, against a team that went on to go to the NBA Finals and then promptly dismantled their team for some reason 6 months later, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander averaged 32, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists per game on 50% shooting and 55% shooting from 3. And he still averaged 8 free throws a game in that series. So 0.9 less than, the regular season last year. See, that just proves my point that he gets to whatever spot he wants anyway, because there's a lot more facets to his game. Like, he's deadly in the mid-range, he's deadly in the floater area, he's deadly near the rim, obviously. And now he's taking more threes this year. He's taking like 7 a game and he's shooting 37% from 3, which is his highest since the post-bubble shortened season in 2020-21 when he shot 41%. This dude is better everywhere. Like, I know his assist numbers are the same as last year, but I'm telling you, his playmaking has improved. He is still an awesome defender, and he's the engine of a team that's right now putting up one of the best regular seasons in NBA history. And it's not because of the free throws. It's because, like Jaylen Brown said, he's that good.